Okay, this is a follow-up to my second shooter at Trump rally video in which I made a mistake and I want to talk about it. So in the original audio that I pulled, this is from the stage mic. And the reason I pulled that audio is because that microphone doesn't move very much. It stays pretty close in orientation to the way it started throughout the entire shooting. It does move a little bit. If you watch the video, you can see that when all the Secret Service come up, the podium and the microphone get moved a little bit. But it's moving a lot less than all the microphones on the cell phones that from all the videos that you've seen. So this is, in my opinion, probably the closest to true, the closest to ground truth in terms of the audio that we have. However, I saw somebody point out, and I wish I had caught this, but I don't know why I didn't. There is a problem with this microphone audio, and that is that there's a limiter set on this microphone, which means that if a loud noise happens and this microphone picks it up, it will automatically duck the audio, and that's called a mic limiter. So let me pull that up, the definition here. Mic limiter or peak limiter prevents audio from exceeding a certain level, which can help reduce distortion and clipping. So in other words, if it gets too loud, the microphone can't pick up all of that audio, and what would typically happen is it would like crackle, or there'd be some distorted sounds. So rather than continue to try to pick up that distorted audio, what the microphone will automatically do, and not every microphone will do this, but some are set to have a limiter on them, it'll automatically duck the amplitude of the incoming audio that it's picking up and try to account for that. So since that noise of the bullet flying by, that little sonic boom, that sonic pop, is so loud, it essentially ducks the audio to almost zero, which means it's really not picking up any audio right after the gunshot. And this will be important in a minute. Right now, I just want to show you what I'm talking about. So here's Trump speaking right before the first shot, and it looks like he stops speaking right after that, but he doesn't. That's just an effect of the mic limiter. So, and like that makes sense, right? It's going to take him a second to stop talking. Like if he's in the middle of a word, that sonic boom is hitting him. He's not going to instantly stop talking. It takes a second for him to realize what just happened. And so he's in the middle of a word, and you should see audio on either side of this little pop right here that's at the same amplitude, but you don't. It's way quieter here and louder here. And that is the effect of a mic limiter. It's a pretty quick mic limiter, and right away it ducks the audio. So I had to go through and account for that and raise up the amplitude back to its prior level, the level before each of those pops. And I had to do that for all of the entire sequence of gunfire. Both sequences, both of those volleys. So let me pull up that audio where I've done that. And I'm not sure that I've done it perfectly, so I'm happy to have somebody else go in and try. And in fact, you can kind of tell I haven't done it perfectly. But let's listen to a section of this prior to me trying to fix it, and then I'll listen to a section of it after I tried to fix it. So here's prior to me fixing it. You can hear Trump's voice get ducked quite a bit.
What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened?
Okay, now let me play the one where I've edited it, edited. I don't know if you've seen that meme, but it cracks me up every time.
What happened? What happened? What happened?
So it still ducks a little bit, and I can come in here and try to fix it. The part of the problem is, and this is actually, I think this is kind of interesting. You can see the harmonics of Trump's voice right here. Part of the issue is it's so distorted because of that sonic boom that it distorts the picking up of Trump's voice, and it doesn't even exist in this audio. I mean, you can kind of see this faint little line right here, but it's all distorted and doesn't look, it's not a clear, straight harmonic as it would normally be. And I think that's also where his, the P of the word happen is. I could be wrong about that, but if so, that would be, there'd be a stop in there anyway, because the harmonics, you only see the harmonics when it's a vowel sound. There are a couple exceptions to that, but for the most part, these indicate vowels. So anyway, why does this matter? Well, when we go over to that second volley, that original pop that I pointed out that was kind of weird actually might make sense looking at it with this way. So let's go back and we're going to compare the same way that we did in the last video. And if you haven't seen that, I still recommend watching it because I explain all of this. But essentially, we take that sonic pop, that sound of that sonic pop, and the time from that to the sound of the actual gunshot, and we compare each of those two sounds across all of the shots and make sure that that's the same amount of time that passes. And I'll just recap, but basically what that means is, the sonic pop is when the bullet flies by, and the thump of the gunshot is the sound of the gunshot that comes later, and that's because it takes a little bit of time for that sound to hit us. The bullet's flying faster than the speed of sound. And in fact, part of the reason for this little pop right here is because it's flying faster than the speed of sound. That's the sound of a very tiny sonic boom. And so that's what we're comparing. We're comparing this snap or this pop of the little sonic boom of the bullet flying by and that thump of the gunshot hitting us. Now, one thing that I gotta point out is that people keep saying that this difference, so it's about 2.22. The time difference is about 2.22 or 2.21, somewhere in there, seconds. And people are saying, oh, well, that amount of time isn't long enough for a shooter to have been where he was. But as you'll see in one of the comments of my previous video, this 0.21 or 0.22, that amount of time isn't from the shot being fired to the sound reaching us. It's from the bullet flying past us to the sound reaching us. It took a little bit of time for the bullet to reach us as well, because it wasn't flying instantaneously. It does take a little bit of time. So it's actually a little bit more. And how far out that is depends on how fast that bullet is flying, which is actually, as far as I understand, impossible to know. So unless we knew what bullet was being fired and with what weapon and from where for sure, then we would never be able to do that math. We just don't know how far away that gun was for sure, or that weapon was for sure. The best math that we can do is compare the snap to the thump and make kind of a guess about how fast that bullet was flying, I mean, I guess you could say, okay, well, how long was this little sonic boom? You could try to analyze the features of that little sonic boom, and maybe you could kind of figure out how fast that bullet was flying. But good luck. That's going to be real hard math to do, and we're going on. I mean, this audio isn't perfect, as I've already talked about in this video. So what we're going to do in this video, as I did in the previous video, is compare where the sonic boom is, that little snap, to where the thump is, the weapon firing. And we're going to compare that difference across each shot and make sure it's pretty close. If it's not close, then that would probably indicate that there's a second shooter. Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out. So we'll compare this one to this one. It's pretty close. This one to this one's pretty close. And I went into more detail in the previous video, but what I want to talk about is this second volley. So this one to this one is pretty close. This one to this one is pretty close. So that pretty much accounts for there being the same shooter firing the same weapon with the same bullet speed from the same location for the most part. But here's where it got weird in the previous volley and where I messed up a little bit. So we've got this shot here, which is the last shot that the attempted assassin fired. But the one that I didn't understand before was this shot right here. And the reason I didn't understand it is because of what I mentioned earlier, which is that microphone was ducking. And this shot here was ducking the sound of the the sound of the weapon firing, which should have appeared right here. And in fact does. I didn't see that because of that audio being ducked. And so it took me going in and fixing the audio to see that little thump right there. And so in my original video, I expected that this was from a sniper from a long distance away, and then there's a secondary thump that appears over here. And I thought, oh, well, that's the weapon firing of the second shooter, and this is the thump of their weapon. I take that back. I don't think that's the case. There may be a second shooter, but I don't think that's the proof of it. It's just that I messed up and I didn't realize what I was looking at, and I should have boosted up that audio. So we see a shot here, a shot here, a shot here, and a shot right after it right here. Now here's where we've got to do some sleuthing. We need to figure out, is it possible to fire a weapon with that close together, shots that close together, from here and here? Would that be possible? I don't know. Also, there's another little pop right here that is not accounted for. Is that a second shooter? I don't know. But as far as those points I was making in the previous video, those are null and void, and I apologize. I should have done a better job of fixing the audio before I analyzed it. So what I now see is that there's a volley here with 3 shots, and there's a volley here with 4 shots, and then this sound right here, I don't think that's the sound of a weapon firing. If we listen to it, I mean, maybe it could be a weapon firing. Yeah, I guess it could be. I don't know what that is. So this might be a second shooter here. Does kind of sound like one. What I think it could be is the microphone getting hit or the connection being like interrupted for a second, because all the Secret Service team and Trump are all moving the podium around. It could be that. It could be a second shooter. It could be all sorts of things. I don't know. So this is still a pretty suspicious sound right here, worth looking into. This little pop right here is a little bit suspicious, worth looking into. And there could be all sorts of other information that I don't have and haven't noticed yet. But if you're going to be looking at this, you've got to realize that there's more to the story than what one person looking at a waveform is going to be able to tell you. You've got to look at the spectral frequency display. You've got to look at the video and match it up. You've got to compare and contrast the different recordings that we have. You got to triangulate the shooter's position based on the different sounds and when they occurred and where, by looking at all those different videos with the sound. And even still, there's probably always going to be just a little bit of information that we can't quite figure out for sure. One thing I will say is it sure doesn't look like the shooter shot 8 shots. I don't see any evidence of that. Even after accounting for that ducked audio, the audio that was that I had to boost up again, even accounting for that, I still only see 4 shots here, and 4 plus 3 does not equal 8. So I don't know why the FBI is saying there were eight shots fired. It doesn't look like it to me. So anyway, I'm sorry for missing that in the first video. Hopefully this video shows you something that you hadn't seen before, and hopefully people start being a little bit more careful about what they're showing you in their videos, because I've seen a lot of claims made without a lot of information given. Before you start saying that there was a second shooter for sure, you got to look at the evidence, and I don't think people are doing that. Everybody's just jumping to conclusions. I think, I'm still open to the idea, but I think what's weird right now for me is, why is the FBI saying that 8 shots were fired when it really doesn't seem like that? Yeah, that's all I got.